Okay, welcome to the North Texas Council Vetting Committee for the 5th District Court of Appeals, Place 2. We have with us today David Evans. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
I'm going to read the rules out loud, which are: no one is allowed to be in the room except the vetting panel. North Texas Council vetting camera operators and the candidate. All electronics allowed in the room shall be turned off except laptops used by the vetting committee and the video recorders provided by the vetting committee. No written materials or notes will be taken by the candidate. North Texas Council vetting panel members and candidate agree that all questions and responses at this vetting session are to remain confidential property until videos are uploaded and considered public information on the North Texas Council website and or the alternate websites. Verbal questions will be asked and verbal responses to those questions will be given with 2-minute responses for each question. There will not be any follow-up questions or explanations of the questions given during the video session. You may, however, request for a repeat of a question at the time the question was first asked during this video session.
Thank you.
We'll now introduce the vetting committee members. I'm Gordon Edwards from Movilla, Texas.
Liz Moser from Garland.
Bob Morrison, Dallas.
Brad Voigt, Midlothian.
Again, David Evans is with us today. Please start off with a 2-minute introduction of yourself and why you are running.
Thank you. I'm David Evans, and I'm running for the 5th Court of Appeals, Place 2, and I'm running because I am committed to applying the law correctly and Christian principles that have evolved in our law today and keeping them alive. I have the most judicial experience, the only judicial experience of anyone in this race, 12 years. And that elected judicial experience resulted in my having the opportunity to demonstrate my conservatism, both fiscal and applying law conservatively, running my court fiscally conservatively, if I have a chance later to tell you more, and applying the law as the Constitution, the writers intended, and as the authors of statutes intended at the time that they enacted them. So that I believe a very significant aspect of being a judge is not legislating from the bench. That to me is the touchstone between conservatism in the law and a liberal judge who starts rewriting laws because it doesn't feel good as that judge is confronted with facts that the judge is unhappy about. Those policy decisions are to be fought out in the legislature, and judges are to apply the law that results from that. Just a little bit about me. I'm married, been married to my wife for 35 years, coming up on 36 years. We've got 2 sons who are in graduate school. My older son is married. They're down in Houston. My younger son is in graduate school up in North Texas. And I went to Dallas Theological Seminary, and I was involved in the Republican Party of Dallas County for many years before I ran as a judge and served as a judge for 12 years, ending in 2006. I look forward to your questions.
We're now going to start the questions. You will have 2 minutes to answer each of the following questions. Question 1. Per your website, you have claimed to have studied the Bible. Which Bible do you study?
I have, if you mean which translation, I have a number of translations, and I also read the scriptures in Greek and in Hebrew. My preference is the New English translation done by some Dallas Theological Seminary graduates. Another recent, newer, good one is the ESV. Both of those have explanatory notes regarding translation and what they call sense notes. so that they explain why they're making a translation of something that might be a difficult concept. An example might be a literal translation might say something like a passage in the Psalms or in Isaiah might say God gathers his people under his wing, and we don't get that expression today, and that might get translated literally in, for example, the New American Standard Bible, and might get translated in a sense translation in the New English translation saying God extends his protection to his people. So I have probably 20 or 30 translations, and my preference is I read my Bible on my iPhone all the time now. From Olive Tree has some great software. I hope I understood your question and answered the question.
Thank you. Question number 2 is, who do you study the Bible with and where?
I have a quiet time every morning and study it with myself. I have a friend that I have had a morning breakfast with for in the neighborhood of about 15 years, and we're ending that because he's just moved. And I also attend High Point Baptist Church, where I study the scriptures there. I've been in a number of different Bible studies associated with churches and with other groups over the years. And so it's been just a lot of different ways like that. I've taught Sunday school. I focused on the age group a little bit older than my boys at the time when they were young, and kind of taught kids a little bit older all the way through, both so that I could help other people's children and at the same time learn a little bit about what the coming nightmare was going to be like when my boys reached the age of the kids that I was teaching. So I've done a lot of things like that through the years.
Okay, question 3. When precedence has not been set on a particular law, where do you draw the line between following the Constitution and interpreting the law?
Do the rules let me ask a question about the question? Or maybe you could read the question again.
Okay. When precedence has not been set on a particular law, where do you draw the line between following the Constitution and interpreting the law?
Well, you always follow the Constitution. And so the question seems to pose the possibility that the law might violate the Constitution. A party has to raise that issue. There are some issues that courts can raise on their own, like jurisdiction, but the court can't raise on its own a constitutional question that the parties have not raised. The court can possibly direct the parties to consider an issue and rebrief it. So then, to answer the question a little more directly, if there is a conflict between a law and the Constitution, you follow the Constitution. One principle of interpreting laws is courts are obligated to interpret laws, if possible, so that they comply with the Constitution. And that is a principle of Texas law as well as of U.S. constitutional law. And you all are aware that that just was employed by Roberts, and it's very controversial whether he rewrote the whole statute in order to make it fit the Constitution, as opposed to looking at two alternative interpretations and choosing the one that's constitutional as opposed to the one that wouldn't be constitutional.
Next question. How do you administer justice when laws conflict with the U.S. Constitution?
Again, if a law conflicts with the Constitution, a party needs to raise that issue, and the court needs to follow the Constitution, whether the conflict is with the Texas Constitution or the conflict is with the United States Constitution. So then the court would consider and evaluate, and it sounds like the question presupposes that the statute at issue, or the law, which I assume you mean by statute, but it could be a regulation, violates the Constitution. The court should declare that it violates the Constitution. And if there's more to the question, I'd be glad to answer more.
Okay, thank you. Question number 5. Where does the Bible justify you being a judge over people?
I don't think that there's any problem in the Bible with being a judge. It may be that the question comes from the Sermon on the Mount, where Jesus says, "Do not judge lest you be judged." He is talking about personal relationships when he's talking there. People don't really focus, if you read the Old Testament, on how much law and litigation there is that is described in the Old Testament. Most people think that the first thing that happened after Moses led the children of Israel out of Egypt was they got the 10 Commandments, and they didn't. The first thing that happened is they had lawsuits against each other, civil and criminal. It's very clear they were civil and criminal lawsuits. And Moses was spending time deciding between all those lawsuits, and his father-in-law came and observed that and gave him a suggestion that he set up a hierarchy of courts and of a judicial system so that it would be more efficient for the people and for him. It was an inefficient, burdensome system that he was doing for both. So he was clearly judging, and that was necessary. And the whole judicial system is very, very necessary to allow people to resolve their conflicts without going to war with each other, without using violence to solve problems where somebody injures somebody else, destroys their property, but won't pay for it. You have to be able to go to court. And so I don't see a problem with a judge judging people in the scriptural sense, because it is set up to be done that way so long as you're applying the law that has been agreed to by everybody.
Okay, question 6. Thank you. How does the Bible relate to the law?
The Bible is the foundation for our law in Western society, and specifically in the United States and in Texas. Our laws derive from the Bible. Our laws do not, we have not taken the Bible and made it all our laws, because some of the laws are religious. In the Old Testament, they did run a theocracy, and we are not a theocracy. And so you have to distinguish between and recognize that. But we have done a fairly good job of bringing forward the social laws from the Old Testament and New Testament and brought them into our laws. For example, the death penalty comes from Scripture. And the death penalty is itself a validation of the importance of life. In that instance, the life of the person who was killed. And therefore, the society, in a slow and thoughtful way, giving the due process rights that an accused has in our society, letting that play out. But when that person is convicted, taking their life actually validates the life of the person who was killed by that person. That comes from the life for a life, and that is from the Scriptures.
Thank you. Question number 7. Is the U.S. Constitution the basis for rule of law? If so, how will you justify not legislating from the bench when a law conflicts with the Constitution?
Okay, can you read that again? It's a very interesting question.
Sure. Is the U.S. Constitution the basis for rule of law? If so, how will you justify not legislating from the bench when a law conflicts with the Constitution?
The Constitution is part of the basis for the rule of law. The Declaration of Independence and the rights stated in it, the inalienable rights that everyone has, are part of the basis for the rule of law. And the statutes passed by legislatures are part of the rule of law. And there is a hierarchy of which are more important when there's a conflict. When there's not a conflict between them, the last thing anybody wants is a judge going rogue and just ruling however that judge wants to rule. When there is a conflict, the Constitution trumps the statute, and a judge should enforce the Constitution and not follow a statute, declare a statute in a specific way or maybe in total to be unconstitutional. And the Constitution, in my understanding, does not and cannot contradict the rights that are in the Declaration of Independence, because the Constitution was written 11 years after the Declaration of Independence specifically to secure the rights that are in the Declaration of Independence. So anybody who attempts to come up with an interpretation of the Constitution that conflicts with the rights in the Declaration of Independence is, you know per se, they've got it wrong. But I wouldn't say that the Declaration of Independence trumps the Constitution, because in my view of it, the two are integrated. The Constitution cannot contradict the Declaration of Independence. And so the rule of law is the consistency of applying that hierarchy of legal principles so that everyone can have an expectation of what the judicial system will rule on a specific set of facts.
Okay. Question number 8. How do you administer justice in a system that creates confusion and control over the people?
Can you read that again, just so I can think, because that's a very, very good question.
How do you administer justice in a system that creates confusion and control over the people?
Let me start with the reverse of it. There is not always, but there can be confusion by people about the system of justice. And the system of justice definitely is where the government power meets the road of an individual person, so that they meet the power of government in the judicial system, in our system of courts and laws. And so then the question is, how do you administer justice with that? To me, it is a combination of the rule of law is what helps to solve that confusion by the entire system should be following the rule of law and be consistently ruling on the outcome of similar fact situations. But that also has to be done kindly and gently and humbly, because people tend to be very intimidated when they come into court. They're not used to it. It feels like high church, and in Texas we're a bunch of Baptists, so to speak, and Methodists, and it feels higher church than the Church of England. It feels very formal, very tight. And so it's very important for everybody in a court system to be told by the judges to be as kind as they can, as gentle as they can, using the least amount of anything that would make somebody upset as they're dealing with the system. But to me, the primary answer to that question is the rule of law is what solves the chaos. And anyone who is out of compliance with the rule of law then experiences the control of our government.
Question 9. Why are there so many laws?
Well, I'll give you two opposite thoughts that I have, because I've thought a lot about this. First of all, we have too many laws. It's impossible for anybody to know all the laws that govern your life. It just is impossible. No human being could know and thoughtfully understand all the laws that govern, like when each of us left our houses and arrived here. There are thousands and thousands of laws that affected our behavior, and probably we didn't know 1/10 of them. On the other hand, I find it very upsetting that there is this enormous and growing body of administrative agencies, both federal and state, over which the people have very little ability to influence the laws, which the regulations have the power of law. And the people have very little influence over that. So this may sound contradictory, but I think all those regulations, state and federal, should be, as a starting point, repealed and made law, and the agencies be prohibited from enacting regulations, so that any further regulations have to be done through Congress on the federal level and through our legislators on the state level, so that when we see our legislators, we can complain to them about the laws, and we have some recourse to talk to them. So on the one hand, we have too many, but I would move a bunch of all the regulations over to the side where they are actually statutes, so that we can start having influence on the legislators to amend them.
Thank you. Question number 10. With the Supreme Court decision on the health care mandate, is this now settled in American jurisprudence that abortion, death policy of human life forms, is to be provided to all residents in America and now be expanded to people in America in violation of immigration laws?
I definitely need you to read that question again for me, thanks.
Okay. With the Supreme Court decision on the health care mandate, is this now settled in American jurisprudence that abortion, death policy of human life forms, is to be provided to all residents in America and now to be expanded to people in America in violation of immigration laws?
I can't remember the rules. Do the rules let me ask a question about the question? No. I'm so sorry, but that last clause is throwing me off. Could you read it one more time? And I won't ask you to read it again.
Happy to do.
Thank you.
With the Supreme Court decision on the health care mandate, is this now settled in American jurisprudence that abortion, parentheses, death policy of human life forms, close parentheses, is to be provided to all residents in America and now to be expanded to people in America in violation of immigration laws?
Okay. My understanding is that Kathleen Sebelius has issued a regulation or an order, but that is from Health and Human Services. It's not an integral part of the statute. The statute does not necessitate treatment for, or it doesn't deal with it. My understanding is it is silent on whether health care will or will not include abortion or abortifacient contraceptive services. So I definitely think the answer to the question is no. The statute doesn't enact that, and this may end up being an administration by administration fight back and forth. But it also sounds like I'm not clear as to the role of the folks in the United States illegally, illegal aliens, to the extent that they get services as well. I guess that it's been held that they get the same services that citizens do. I guess they get whatever those services are that are being provided by any particular administration. everyone needs to focus, I would say, on the initial paragraph, I believe it's the initial paragraph, it might be the second paragraph in the dissent of the 4 conservative justices, who had no dispute that the result could be achieved and comply with the Constitution, but that the issue was whether the way it was gone about did comply with the Constitution. That is very unsettling right there, and everybody needs to consider that, but it sounds like it's going to be a legislative battle for a long time to come.
Thank you. Question number 11. Where will you display the 10 Commandments in your courtroom?
I would be one of 13 justices on the Court of Appeals, and I would not have the administrative power by myself to direct that the 10 Commandments be displayed in the courtroom. I can ask that it be displayed. The Chief Justice is the chief executive judge, having no more than one vote in a particular case, but she is the chief administrative judge for administrative action. I have and had when I was a judge, I had an ancient large Bible in my chambers, and I had it open to different pages at different times, and sometimes the 10 Commandments. So the answer is I would ask that we have an appropriate display that would include the 10 Commandments, and I will ask that if elected. But that is, I'm not going to deceive you and say that I'll display it when I know that I don't have the power to do that. There's 13 justices, and it would be my understanding it would either be the decision of the chief or the decision of all 13.
Okay, question number 12. How does Sharia law fit in America?
Sharia law, most people when they ask that question are meaning it in the sense of what role does Sharia law play in interpreting our statutes? And the answer is none. Sharia law has no role to play in interpreting the statutes or the Constitution of Texas or the United States. Nor does Italian law, nor does Swedish law, nor does the law of Russia. And I want to make it clear that I'm not singling out Sharia law. But everybody does need to understand that there can be some very limited situations where Sharia law would relate. You can have 2, for example, Saudi businessmen in Texas who sell a piece of land over in Saudi Arabia or some place that's governed by Sharia law. Texas law is clear that the law of the location of the land would govern the transfer and what is necessary to transfer the title between 2 people, even if they are here in Texas. And there was a case where it dealt with property in Portugal. And the result was that Portuguese law controls the sale, the transfer of the title to the land. So there can be, I want to be full and complete in my answer to you, there can be some limited circumstances where the parties could agree and it could be upheld in Texas that Sharia law would apply to that. One last quick comment. I know I just got the 30-second signal. There is a new statute that was enacted in the Family Code that limits arbitration, because family arbitration does not touch interstate commerce, so it doesn't deal with the 1925 Arbitration Act in 3 U.S.C. And it allows anyone to dispute that they were forced into a Sharia arbitration clause.
Question number 13. How do you define conservatism? Name or identify what you do on a daily basis that defines your definition. Let me read it again.
No. in the political sense, because you can have conservative theology and other things. Conservatism is, in my understanding, the view that people solve their own problems best. Government has a very limited function to keep us from killing each other, to provide protection against other countries, some very limited functions, but that people and businesses function best with the least amount of government and the least amount of taxes caused by government. In addition, conservatism, as I understand it, is allowing the people, through our Republican form of government of their representatives in the state legislature and the federal legislature, Congress, allow the people to have the laws that the people choose to have through their representatives, and for judges to follow those laws and not make law, so that a judge applies law even if the judge doesn't like the law or doesn't think it's the best policy. If that's the will of the people, the judge should follow the law. So if everybody did that, it wouldn't make a difference whether you were a Democrat or Republican. But one of the differences between Democrat and Republican is Republicans feel strongly, a conservative feels strongly, that a judge should follow the law and apply the law and not legislate from the bench, not change the law because it doesn't feel good, and apply laws even if you don't like them.
Okay, thank you. Question number 14, and this is your last question. Would you like to take this time to correct any accusations pointed toward you or your campaign, or point out any differences between you and your opponent?
Oh, that would take more than 2 minutes. Let me say that I see one of the major differences between myself and Mr. Whitehill as that I have been a judge. I have paid the price for being conservative. I gave up a lucrative law practice and took a position as a judge that paid less than the starting year associate lawyer at a big firm. And I did that because, in my view, we all have to get involved in the way that we can as America is sliding away from the Constitution, sliding away from the founding of our country, and growing government and having government take over our lives. You can see that difference, I think, because my website very clearly identifies myself as a conservative and as a Republican, and Mr. Whitehill does not even attribute to himself that he is conservative. He doesn't use the word, at least the last time I checked his website, and he doesn't have on there that he is Republican. I think that the pressure of the lawyers for somebody to be moderate and be a friend is such that lawyers tend to be at the most conservative, kind of in the middle, and they go left from there. And I think you can see a difference if somebody is already not putting in print that they are conservative and they are Republican. I doubt that they will put that in print when they are writing an opinion. They will not write a conservative opinion because that will get read by the lawyers in the Bar Association. And I want to point out, I did get the high vote among lawyers in the bar poll, and I think that's because I was a good and fair judge applying the laws so that the lawyers knew what to expect. Thank you all very much.